I can confirm here today on your show, there's not 10 billion algo in existence anymore. There's now 9.9 something billion algo. The number of nodes has 3x'd. The number of accounts has exploded. Donald Trump, right? Make Algorand great again. Let's fucking go. The economy around cryptocurrency may evolve past fixed supply at some point. Put them down your underwear and you can walk into a country with $100 million in your pants. At that point, we won't have anything left to fix in terms of decentralization. We're about to release, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, but
Welcome back to another Beyond the Basics. I've got John, the CTO of Algorand Foundation, joining us today. Second time having a chat with John here. Glad to have you back. How you been?
DB, thanks for having me, baby. Yeah, good. Things are going well. Lots going on across the crypto industry, so lots to talk about. Good to see you, my friend.
For sure, yeah. Things never slow down in this space, do they? 24/7, 365.
Exactly. So, which is the way God intended. You know, exactly. The market should stay open.
Yep, completely agree. So yeah, you guys have had a lot going on. I think we chatted about 6 months ago, and so much going on with your roadmap and everything coming up. I know you guys just had one big release, I think beginning of this year, January, with your staking changes. So let's dive into that real quick.
Yeah, totally. We've done a whole bunch of different things over the last kind of 6 months. I mean, it's been a busy 3 years, I guess, at the foundation. We've been investing a ton of time, effort, resources into the technology stack, into improving the user experience, into making the network and the tools fitter, better, faster, you know. And so I guess notably, as you just said, we had a hugely important release at the start of this year, at the start of 2025, where we made a protocol level change to start rewarding the block production process. Now, you might sound a little bit strange to some of your listeners who are like, don't all blockchains give tokens to people or entities that produce blocks and verify transactions? Isn't that kind of part of the story? I guess atypically on Algorand, that wasn't the case. There was no reward for mining or minting a block. And the notion was, or the presupposition was, that holders would stake their algo altruistically, you know, for the betterment of everyone's security. What we found over time is that that kind of presupposition did not hold true. Maybe in certain circumstances it can, with a certain distribution, but when you have a well-distributed coin that has thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of holders, or even more, it can be very difficult to expect a large number of those holders to come together, run the computers, make the effort, maintain the software, stake their tokens, and support the network. And so we made quite a tectonic shift in our thinking around how the security and decentralization of the Algorand network would work. And we decided, as an ecosystem, but there was a process around this. You know, there was a white paper that we put out that was a kind of a discussion paper first. Then we consulted with the community. There was a design process. You know, the code obviously takes a while to write, and then we upgraded the network through a vote. But ultimately, we kind of took this position: hey, let's start having protocol level rewards for the transaction validation / block production process, and it's been a phenomenal success. And I say that with the following kind of hard numbers. And, you know, I like to be intellectually honest about things. It's part of my brand. So maybe I'll just preface a little caveat, which is that it's very difficult to count the number of nodes on a network accurately when it's distributed, because, you know, you'd have to essentially port scan the entire IP range and verify that services are running and stuff. There's no central dashboard that shows the total number. And so we have to estimate this based off telemetry that we can kind of harvest. And so, you know, for example, if a guy runs a node on computer A, turns it off, and then turns computer B on with a totally different IP address, we might double count that node, and vice versa. There's instances where we're not counting nodes properly, as in there's more than we're actually counting. And so these are estimates, but we've seen the estimated number of nodes go from around 2,000 to around 6,000. Now, you know, whatever you want to say, in relative terms, we've seen a 3x increase in the number of nodes based on our consistent counting methodology, which hasn't changed. And so the number of nodes have 3x'd. The number of online accounts has exploded. Again, we had like a few hundred online accounts. Now we have over 2,000 individual Algorand accounts that are registered to participate in consensus. I think I looked at it this morning. Let me actually look right now. It's 2,154. Now that's a number that is accurate because it's on the blockchain. When an account goes online, it's either online or offline. Online being active in consensus, actively making blocks, and so over 2,100 accounts are online. And I think then, most critically, the amount of algo that was being staked globally in the network. There's about 8 billion or 8.5 billion algo out there in the world, in the public domain, i.e., part of the liquid supply. The other chunk is either held by technologies, the protocol engineering company, or the foundation, which is the treasury. And we had about a billion algo being staked at any one time. Now we have 1.5 billion algo. So that's a 50%
Nice.
increase in stake. But way more important than that, in the same period, we've removed about 400 million algo from the foundation staking operations. So of that 1 billion we used to have, we were a good chunk of that. And so we're no longer staking about 400 million algo. And so if you
And
like,
this is all just in the course of the past 3 months, pretty much,
right,
right?
right.
Wow,
So,
impressive.
one lens to view it under is we went from, say, we've increased a billion algo nearly in community stake, and so again, these numbers are a little bit fuzzy. It's hard to get perfect metrics on them, but it's a real significant change, and I don't think we're done. I don't think it's perfect. I would like to see that number not be 1.5 billion. I'd like to see it be 2 billion or 2.5 billion, something around 25% of the total supply or 30% of the liquid supply. But we're heading the right way. And over the coming number of months, as our governance program stops being rewarded, we expect to see another kind of wave of people joining the stake. And so we will be reducing the Algorand Foundation stake down to about 5-10% of the total set because we think that that's the sweet spot. And we want 95% of the stake to be community. And so that's where we're heading. So essentially, yeah, it's been a huge success. The network didn't fall over, thank God. Uh,
Yeah,
we,
I'm sure
we
that had to be a stressful period for sure. Kind of like Ethereum moving to proof of work to proof of
oh,
stake. Very tense
totally.
times, huh?
Totally. And you can check, double check, triple check. You can have really smart people on staff. You can I think have some of the smartest cryptographic minds and engineering minds in the world looking at this stuff. But you don't know until you roll it out in the real world, on the real internet, on real
Yep.
computers. And so, network didn't go down. The number of nodes has 3x'd. The number of accounts has exploded in terms of or real stake, what I call non-centralized stake. So yeah, it's been a big win for decentralization and a big win for security. And I hope that we maintain this velocity. And so that brings kind of to the next logical piece, which is like, well, how do you fund this going forward forever? Because right now, by the way, a large chunk of the reward has come from the foundation. We are kind of supplementing. There's an account on the protocol we've put a load of algo into, and that's the account that pays out the rewards for this thing. And so Algorand isn't inflationary. There's a fixed supply, so the money has to come from somewhere. And so we will probably, over the next year or two, have to start looking at how does the fee market work? How does gas work? What are the fees on the network to make this sustainable so that the fees generated by each block are incentive enough to maintain a high security level?
Got it. Yeah, so that's right. You guys started without rewards, which is definitely unique in the L1 space.
For sure.
And 100% is already in circulation with no inflation, as you said.
I would say it's a little bit under. It's like maybe 85% in circulation, just because there's a 1.5 billion or so in the Algorand treasury at the foundation that is essentially outside the trading supply or outside the liquid supply.
Got
That
it.
is used for community stuff. It's used to pay for developer tool engineering, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. But not a constant inflation like a lot of networks have, the 1%, 1.5% that you see
Right.
with a
And
lot
so
of these
Algorand
networks.
did go through what I would consider, and I'm certainly not an economist, but a heavy inflation period. There was a period where a lot of early VCs that had the token sold it. There was a period where the foundation was paying out huge sums of money to people who just held algo, just essentially inflating the supply. You used to get algo just by holding it. You used to get more algo, which is, I think, ridiculous, but whatever. And then like there was also a period where the foundation was spending algo at a very accelerated rate, and so we got to the 80% plus circulation quite fast, and of course that has now dropped off because there's only so many of these tokens, and so yeah, the effective inflation rate has exponentially dropped off. compared to what it was obviously in the early years. And yeah, over the coming couple of years, will continue to be slow.
Got it. Yeah, it's a topic I've been seeing a lot lately about the different models of tokenomics and inflation. And you can have the fixed supply camp,
Uh-huh.
and then you have the other that's it's also an interesting dynamic is the constant inflation with the tail burn, kind of
Yeah,
what
yeah,
Ethereum and Solana have. And I see both sides of it, and I
yeah.
almost
Me
wonder
too.
if we're too early to know which is going to win or which is going to be the best. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel you, and I agree. It's like I see both sides of it, and I've spoken before about another cryptocurrency that I'm really very fond of called Monero, which I've been in the community and ecosystem and tech side of since 2015 or so, late 2015, and it has a kind of an inflation mechanic where it was on a kind of a curve. It started off quite high, now it's dropped, and now it's zero point 0.6 XMR, so Monero per block forever, and the blocks are I think it's every 2 minutes or something like that. So like you know, and I think I mean I hold Monero. I think it's going to do very well. It's one of my preferred cryptocurrencies, and as an example, it's inflationary, and so my view is that there's a lot of value to inflation. Of course, people view that word like I do as something that takes value from me, from my bank account, from my savings, from my family. Inflation bad, and I think that that's what we're all hardwired to think. And deflation is good to a certain degree because it increases the value of money in your pocket. But again, not an economist, but it feels to me like sustainable economies needs a certain level of ebb and flow around that inflation deflation process. It can't just be one way forever. You get hyperinflation, and it can't just be the other way forever, because otherwise you get hyperdeflation. And I guess that leads to scenarios where you're eventually in a world where you have to subdivide a single satoshi in order to buy a loaf of bread. And does that work? And so I think probably it's worth putting the research into this. And I do agree with you. We're early doors on this whole thing, and I think the economy around cryptocurrency may evolve past fixed supply at some point.
Yeah, I could see that too, especially since if we look at the long term picture, tokens lost. I think people are estimating that there's really only maybe 17 to 18 million Bitcoin that are
Yeah,
actually that will ever be because
right.
of the amount that are lost or either in Satoshi's wallet, who knows if he's active or alive or if it's a
Yeah.
person.
Well, I got another good example of this, DV. Yesterday, I was someone reached out to me and they needed help with their wallet, and they had some tech issue, and I wanted to see if it was a bug. So I made a wallet on my phone, and I sent one algo to it from one of my accounts, and I tested the bug thing, and then I nuked the VM that I had the virtual machine, sorry, that I had the wallet on. And so what did I do? I basically made a wallet, funded it with a single algo, and then destroyed the computer that it was running on. And I was like, oh shit, I forgot to send that algo back out. And so, so I can confirm here today on your show, there's not 10 billion algo in existence anymore. There's now 9.9 something billion algo. So the hard supply is less than 10 billion now, because I personally have burned one by accident. And so you're right. Think how many times that happens. Hacks, people die, people lose their keys, people's seeds are like rained on and they can't read this stupid thing anymore. People's computers explode and or crash, and they didn't write down the seed. And for essentially all crypto that is fixed supply, the supply is way less. I would say if it's been around for a while than the theoretical max.
For sure, yeah. There's so many different directions I want to take this right now too. With if we can go into quantum computing, I've seen people mention that they can retrieve lost coins and funds, maybe possibly through quantum computing. You also bring up privacy. I definitely want to dive down that a little bit because I think that's going to be a big one. Kind
Yeah,
of want to step back into the nodes and the staking
sure.
a little bit more. And I do have this is one of the platforms that I found
Yeah, it's a
for
good one.
your note. And yeah, I kind of want if we could break it down a little bit again, the types of nodes, and I know it's super easy for you guys to run nodes too at this point. And I have
Yeah,
seen this number fluctuate a lot, and I guess that's due to what you were mentioning earlier.
yeah. So and look, like I mentioned earlier, it's good data, but it's data that in certain cases is estimated. So like what we're looking at here is a dashboard that's run by Nodely, which is essentially like a node as a service. They do lots of other things, but they do kind of Algorand node as a service. And so these guys are really competent. And what you're seeing here is like, I guess, like a Grafana dashboard. So a visualization of the data that they see. And the first big number there, the 6747, that's the total number of nodes. Now, I want to be kind of clear with people. This doesn't mean validators. This means all nodes, and sometimes nodes are validators, right? They're producing blocks, minting blocks, mining blocks. Sometimes those nodes are just being run to follow the chain because maybe a block explorer needs access to the data, or maybe an exchange wants to know how transactions are changing on the network. And so there's lots of business cases where you'd run a node, but you wouldn't be validating blocks. And so the 6747 is total number of nodes. And like I mentioned, the way we get this number is by looking at Algorand nodes that connect to relays and looking for unique IP addresses, essentially. And so, like I said, if you had someone on Amazon who brings up a node for a very short time, you'll see this number tick up to 6748. And there's a kind of a cleanse of the IP pool where if we don't see the node for a certain number of days, we decrement the count. And so, just to be clear, this is not perfectly accurate, but it gives us a great indication of the total number of nodes over time. So this is kind of like, you can see over time, over the last 3 months, we've had this curve up in the number of nodes. Using a static and consistent calculation methodology, we've just seen a huge increase in the number of nodes. What you see in the middle then is like, of these IP addresses, who owns them, right? Is it like, because we can tell, we know on the internet who owns certain blocks of IP addresses, like AT&T, big American telco. We know they own IP address X to Y, and so we're able to kind of see the breakdown. And what's wonderful about this graph, DB, is that, and I'm not going to call out other competitors because I don't want to shit on them, but like, it's really quite a varied pie there. You know, you want as many colors in that pie as possible. What you don't want to see is 90% of your traffic on AWS or Amazon, which is the purple one there. But instead, we have a tiny amount of our nodes running on Amazon, Hertzner, GCP, Vodafone, and a whole bunch of them running on, at the top, what we classify as various nets or AT&T. And so what are they? They are domestic ISPs, like, you know, consumer home user internet service providers, right? So what this is showing is that like most Algorand nodes are not sitting in an enterprise grade data center run by Amazon, okay? Which is fine for production computing, but not good for decentralized networks. And instead, most of these nodes are being run at home by normal people.
For sure, yeah, it definitely shows good growth too.
Right.
Back to the node count. So, yeah, what is your goal with these nodes? Where would you like to see them in the next 1 year, 2 years, 5 years?
Yeah, great question. You know what? The thing is, on that dashboard, we've seen about 6,700 nodes. Even if at the lowest bound of my estimate, you know, and again, this is not an exact science, but I'd say we have at least 5,500 nodes on the network that are active. I think we've already made it to a place where the number of nodes is good. I don't think in a decentralized system there is an upper bound on an optimal number of nodes. I don't know what that number specifically is for Algorand, but like there isn't, you know, you wouldn't want 1 million nodes. It wouldn't really make sense. And so, you know, you're looking for functional decentralization, which is something we try to target. And so I think the node count is good. What I'd like to see though is, and by the way, if it increases, great, but it doesn't. We're not in a bad place with it. What I would like to see increase is the organic stake. So I want to see the Algorand Foundation stake become, you know, single-digit percentages of the overall staking set, and I want to see the community stake breach the 2 billion algo, or about 20% of the total supply, 30% of the liquid supply kind of level.
Got it. So a lot of it is based around the staking supply. It sounds like that's kind of one of your focuses.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like, you know, you can have 10,000 nodes, but if they're each staking 10 algo, then you haven't got a lot of stake. And so really it's about seeing more and more people add to their current stake and more people bring substantial amounts of algo online because the rewards are, at this point, industry leading. And so there's every incentive to do so. And so, like I say, the number of nodes is really good. The total number of algo I would like to see increase. But again, you know, we're at probably somewhere around 20% of the liquid supply. And to give people some frame of reference for, like, you know, is that good, bad, or indifferent? The last time I looked at Ethereum, it was about 25% of the liquid supply was being staked. So, you know, we're about 20, they're 25, we're in the same ballpark. So things are good, but the more algo that's online, the harder it is to cause issues with the network from a security point of view.
For sure. And so to clarify too, when it comes to the nodes, the 6700 number,
Mhm.
those also include light nodes and observer nodes as well. So a decent portion of those don't get any rewards, I imagine.
Right, exactly. And in fact, we can tell the exact number of nodes, more or less, that get rewards by looking at the number of accounts that are online. So we looked and we saw that
Got
the
it.
number of accounts was over about 2,000. Typically, you have a one-to-one relationship between accounts and nodes, but not always, because it's possible to run more than one online account on a node. So the total number of consensus nodes is less than that 2,170 number, but it won't be much less. So I would say we have close to 2,000 nodes online that are running consensus, maybe a little bit less. But we have these 2,100 accounts that are online. So, it really is in a very good place. And, if you look at the landscape across Web3 and you look at proof of stake networks, you'll find it pretty hard to find other networks that have thousands of nodes online that are providing copies of the chain, or providing, sorry, not copies of the chain, but providing like transaction data, whilst having over 2,000 entities bringing their accounts online. I think that they're pretty good numbers.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say it's probably top 10, if not top 5 in node counts for block producing nodes in the layer 1 blockchain for sure.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
those
yeah.
are good numbers.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so when you were talking about the max potentially, was that based off of the validators or block producing nodes or total? Is there's kind of two camps I've seen a lot of
Yeah,
lately. Those that think there's going to be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of observer nodes or light clients that can just do things on their smartphone. And
yeah.
then the other side that thinks, which kind of seems the industry is moving towards a little bit, 100 nodes, 200 nodes, 400 nodes might be sufficient for the future.
It's a good point. The most important nodes on the network from a security point of view are, of course, those consensus nodes, the ones that are actively validating transactions, actively creating blocks. But the other nodes have value too. They form a globally connected network very soon, in terms of our peer-to-peer network change that we're making. So soon, these consensus nodes or participation nodes will connect directly to each other. And so they all surface and help with the transaction propagation, information propagation of new transactions and fresh blocks as they get added to the chain. So it's a confluence of both. But yes, the kind of the majority of the security, of course, is provided by the validator nodes, or as we call them, consensus nodes, which are currently around that kind of 2,000 number. So it'd be nice to see that increase somewhat, but we're in a very healthy place.
Yeah, I'd say so. So where would you fall in the camp long term, 5, 10, 15, 20 years with regards
Yeah.
to all these light clients and some people that say there should be millions of nodes and others that say 2000 is, well, again, 2000 is the block producing. That's the important part. The
Right.
6700 is kind of the observer part. Yeah, where do you fall in that camp?
Yeah, so I think you just got to focus on functional decentralization, and that is that your network is decentralized enough that it's worth the bother of building on. And I say this because whenever you involve a blockchain network or a blockchain platform or component within your technology stack, you're making some trade-offs. Typically, it has a cost to it, right? You got to pay some fees for the transactions. Typically, it can be slow, right, or slower than traditional databases, because what you could do with SQL in a microsecond or a millisecond is just not achievable, with blockchains that have block times in the seconds or minutes. And so, these are trade-offs we make because we want to add the security that blockchain brings. We want to add the resiliency that blockchain brings, and we want to add the decentralization or self-sovereignty, or permissionless nature of technologies like blockchain. And so we're imbuing our product with certain virtues, but for those virtues, we pay a price, and that price is the trade-offs around speed or complexity. And so when you're making those trade-offs, it has to be worth your while. And so there's, I think, a line somewhere where something is functionally decentralized enough that it's providing value, i.e., it's not like fake decentralization or like hand wavy decentralization, which is decentralized in chat but not in reality. And where is that line? I don't know. It's very easy to draw, but I certainly would say that if you have 20% of the liquid supply or 30% of the liquid supply of a multi-billion-dollar token securing a network, where that network has thousands of validators, you're in a good place. And so I would fall into the camp that thinks thousands of validators are kind of in the right zone. You do need substantive stake. That substantive stake should not be, or substantial stake, and that should not be held by one entity like a foundation or an Inc. or a technology company, and which in our case it's not. And I think that this, I think people talk about this Nakamoto coefficient, which is kind of like a little bit like saying, how many people would I have to corrupt to cause problems here? Is it like 3 people, 3 entities, three companies, or is it like 1,000 entities, 1,000 companies? And even for things like Bitcoin, you'll find that, which by the way we would hold up as a paragon of decentralized excellence. Even for things like that, you would look and you'd say, well, the 3 biggest mining pools or 4 or 5 biggest mining pools are like 80% of the hash rate. And so if you can get to the CEOs or the people who run those mining pools and you can corrupt them, then maybe you can start messing with what's in the blocks in Bitcoin. And so, there's lots of different lenses and stuff like that. But like I said, once you're pushing for functional decentralization so that people using your platform, it's worth the trade-offs that they're making in order to bring blockchain into their app, then I think you're in the right place.
Yeah. Interesting too. I think just within the past few days, Mert, one of Solana's biggest coals, came out and was talking about the Nakamoto coefficient of Solana.
Right.
And a lot of the tools show that it's 19, but he actually called it out, showing that they don't label their providers. And he knows of at least a handful that have multiple staking agencies pools under one agency, I guess.
Yeah, I
And
seen the clip.
their Nakamoto coefficient is less than half of that, he said. So it's hard to gauge, especially if you're in a decentralized and permissionless world.
I appreciate the intellectual honesty that he showed in that clip, coming out there and saying, well, our foundation said X, but we're actually X divided by 2. It's I think it's good. It's good because you're being real, and you got to be real. By the way, for what it's worth, a Nakamoto coefficient of 8 or 9, let's say that's what it actually is. I think the total was 19 divided by 2, right? In whatever, 9.5. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I think that's, if you look at other networks, you won't find many that are much higher than that, in my view, actually. And so, fair dues to him for that. And I think we should all strive to be as good as we can be, because otherwise, you are better off if your network is not providing, if it's providing fake decentralization, all the self-sovereignty, the censorship resistance, the permissionless nature of things, the decentralization, all those buzzwords that we sell or we espouse or we hype, and we say, hey, this is really important. You got to bring power to people and all this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter if there's a foundation or an entity or a handful of people somewhere that can just make it all go away. And so it's only worth bringing these things, these technologies, into your technology stack for your bigger application that you're selling to your customers, if it's providing those values in a way that's not tamperable. Or is that even a word, tamperable? I'm not sure. But if it can't be tampered with.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And you mentioned bringing it to the world. I think, isn't your CEO right now presenting, maybe even literally right now, on stage somewhere with
Right.
Digital Summit? Is that correct?
Yeah, Digital Asset Summit. Yeah, it's in New York, I believe. And so I'm not attending myself. I'm still in Ireland, but I believe, yeah, Staci Warden, my boss, the CEO of the Algorand Foundation, is right there, and she's speaking sandwiched between Donald Trump, right? Make Algorand great again. Let's fucking go, right? The big Don, right? And Michael Saylor. Like Bitcoin.
No pressure to
digital
Staci
asset.
whatsoever.
Yeah. So I mean, it's perfect, right? You got Staci in the middle of Donald and Michael Saylor. What a wonderful combination. So lots of eyes, of course, on that main stage for those 3 acts, hopefully today.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to catch up on that, see how those presentations go. I didn't know Trump was actually going to be talking or presenting at the conference.
Yeah. Well, either did we. He was a late addition, but I read on their website that he's joining virtually, so he's not going to turn up in person. But it's still cool that he's taking such an interest in our industry, in the Web3 industry at large. And so it's wonderful for, what's the term, the validation, I guess, for lack of a better term, of the industry as an important, pillar within the broader financial, universe. And so it's, for me, it's a good thing to see this kind of stuff.
Yeah, hard to imagine just maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago that there'd be a president speaking at conferences, putting on balls and events around crypto. It's crazy how things have shifted in just the past 6 months or 12 months.
Yeah, you know what I liken it to sometimes, because I was thinking about that myself today, and I was kind of just like flicking through X, and I was like looking at the headlines, and it's like, I don't know, Pakistan, makes crypto legal tender, and the next headline was like, you know, Christine Lagarde was talking about the digital euro she's making, and then a few down it was like Trump's adding X to X coin, Y coin, Z coin to his global Federal Reserve, and it's like sometimes I think in life, in all walks of things, whether it's like your fitness, maybe you're going to the gym and you started off really unfit and you're kind of not like an athlete, but you're 3 years into it, or whether it's like, I don't know, anything, you're trying to play guitar, you're picking up guitar and you're working on getting great. I think we forget as humans, we're very critical of ourselves sometimes, and we forget to look at the progress that we've made. And I think it's a little bit like that. You still think I suck at guitar, right? I'm playing it for like 15 years. I still think I'm terrible at it. But of course, I'm probably not terrible at it really, but I feel like I am. And so I think as an industry, we sometimes go, oh, we're making no progress. We're making no progress. Yeah, I'm talking about not technically, but not technical progress, but the social progress or political progress. And actually, if you look back at like a 10-year period, holy shit, it's night and day in terms of the headlines from 2017 to now, or the regulatory clarity from 2017 to now. And so sometimes I think we forget to look at how far we've come.
Yeah, it's interesting times, and still a lot to come, obviously, as we're still early in the whole process. As I always love to say, we are super, super early.
I think
Sorry,
nothing
go
says
ahead.
that more, DB, than the market cap. I mean, like the market cap of all crypto is 2.5, 2.6 trillion, something like that. Maybe
Yep.
a bit more today, 2.8, something like that. But like a 2 trillion dollar market cap. That's the how much money you'd have to pay right now at the spot price to buy all of crypto, every single coin ever existing. Some good, some bad, but all of it. And if you look, that's like less money than it would cost to buy, say, Apple, or some other companies that are quite large out there, maybe Nvidia. And so, is a global financial instrument that is outside of the control of seigniorage and governments, whilst being essentially infinitely portable, because you can just remember 24 words, or put them down your underwear, and you can walk into a country with $100 million in your pants. I mean, there's an incredible power in that. And so, is that asset class only worth? I say only. Of course, it's objectively a lot of money, but it's comparatively to other things like gold, metals, derivatives. It's a drop in the ocean. And so, I very much believe that we are only at the start of what crypto needs to become in order to become an asset that's globally relevant.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I completely agree. That actually kind of takes me into one of my next questions around really how the space progresses forward. And I want to bring up something from this was a post, I don't know if you saw this, from
No, I
Zach
didn't.
XBT, XBT
Yeah.
about, well, just kind of where the regulations that might be coming, the scary aspects of the space. Are you familiar with this?
The Bybit hack, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I understand it technically. Yeah, for
Well, yeah,
sure.
not just the Bybit hack, but his analysis of everything that he's been looking into
Okay.
and where he thinks it could potentially lead us, which is kind of scary. There's been a lot of conversation around his analysis, and I've seen others with similar viewpoints that these big hacks and the kind of insecurities in the way the space is progressing almost is not in a great direction at times.
Sure. I guess it's double-edged. I mean, so I haven't read his post or spent much time thinking about it, because I just didn't come across it. But I know ZachXBT as a personality on CryptoX, and so yeah. I mean, look, I feel like it's my off the cuff remark on this is that it's a double-edged sword. With all of that self-sovereignty and permissionless and censorship resistance that I talked about earlier, comes the very heavy responsibility of securing it and making sure that you execute properly. And like the money that I have in my bank account or in my pension fund that I've built over 20 years of working is not in danger of being wiped out, in a single act. Okay, markets go up and down, etc. But like, it won't go to zero in 30 seconds. Whereas something like what happened with Bybit, you get spoofed at web UI or something like that, outside of a hack of some JavaScript somewhere in some backend or some Kubernetes worker, and all of a sudden you've lost $1 billion. I mean, I would argue that in the case of Bybit, they should have been much more careful with an account that held that much money, if I was putting operational procedures around that, it would literally be to have multiple trusted devices that are offline inspect the payload at a byte level of these transactions. But of course, that's operationally inefficient. But yeah, I take the point that like this is all not good and it's heading the wrong way, and DPRK and other things like that. But ultimately, if we give up that freedom or that power that allows people to basically to steal money from insecure implementations without the ability to claw it back, if we give that up, then we're heading to a place where blockchain becomes permissioned, right? Where we have the ability to roll back chains, or some entity or some controlling group, a body, a council, whatever, has the ability to revert transactions. And for me, that completely nullifies the entire value proposition of blockchain in the first place. Now, there's probably some happier medium where we can get to, which is not like the erosion of the value proposition and is not completely centralized. Probably somewhere in the middle where there's some extra controls makes sense. And I do think that we need to mature controls around this stuff, and certainly operational security or OPSEC. But yeah, it's a double-edged sword. I think that these things it's part of the overall deal.
We're definitely kind of towing a fine line between the needing something more KYC permissioned, centralized, but that's not what the whole Web3 crypto ethos is all about. So it'll be interesting to see how things progress in the next couple of years.
Like technologies like Algorand, just as an example, and not plugging Algorand here because there are other networks have things like this too, have the ability to require a token transfer to need a signature from a cryptographic signature, but also need maybe a multi-sig, or need a certificate supplied by someone else. Or I can tell you that on Algorand, certainly we have the ability for native assets to be clawed back or frozen if those fields are set. And so, there are technologies out there to kind of mitigate this stuff a little bit, but ultimately, if your operational security is weak, you're going to end up in a bad place in Web3.
One of the things we talked about last time when I had you on was the peer-to-peer gossip network, because I know this is a big part of the roadmap and a big upgrade, just kind of like along with the staking upgrade you guys have. So tell me, what's the latest with that?
Yeah, so it's essentially code complete. We are going to be rolling it out in our next release. And, to remind viewers who maybe haven't heard of this is basically Algorand fixing one of the critical points that have existed for a while. Industry pundits like Justin Bonds have said, well, Algorand's good, but it's got this one point of centralization. The way data flows in the network uses these relay nodes, and those relay nodes are managed by the Algorand Foundation. And so we wanted to remove that element of facility that we were providing the network, and instead allow the network to function completely on its own. And so the last step in that was to make the flow of data be peer-to-peer between the different nodes in the network, between all of those thousands of nodes we looked at earlier, rather than going over the relays. And so that change will go out. We're hoping by the end of this month, but that only gives us 10 days. I suspect certainly by early April, we'll be rolling out a change. It's not a consensus change, so it doesn't need to be voted in, because we're not changing the rules of consensus or anything to do with the consensus mechanism. This is purely a network operational piece, but it'll be rolling out very soon. But it will address one of the concerns of decentralization that some people have had around Algorand, and I think at that point we won't have anything left to fix in terms of decentralization.
Awesome. Yeah, I know we mentioned, so you brought up Justin in our last chat, and I think those were two of his big things. So I know he's eagerly waiting to see that one come through, and it's definitely another good upgrade for the entire network.
Yeah, hopefully he'll get on space with me. I mean, he's offered to do that before, in fairness to him, so I'm not throwing shade at him. But hopefully after this rolls out, he and I can get on the space to jointly promote Algorand. I'm looking forward to it.
Let's go back into the quantum computing a little bit. I know this is something that Algorand puts a lot of emphasis on, and for good reason, especially with all the news we see on a daily basis. Like so-and-so builds the next greatest quantum computer, and then the next country does it. So where's the space at, and more specifically, where is Algorand at in the whole quantum computing protection, I guess, of everything?
Great question, DB. Quantum is a complex subject because it's a new type, as I've kind of mentioned before. I think certainly on other podcasts, maybe on the one I did with you, it's a new computing paradigm. It's not like an advancement of the existing computers that we have where they're going to get faster. It's a totally new type of computer that uses quantum mechanics or certain properties of physics in order to do certain calculations faster. And those certain calculations, just as a quick primer, are factorization of numbers and very fast search through unstructured data. And so we have two quantum algorithms that do these things, Shor's and Grover's. And you can kind of think like a quantum computer. You can think of it like a GPU. It's a special purpose device that does some things very fast, but isn't a full computer on its own that will just do general purpose computing. But of course, we've seen that this concept of a quantum computer has gone from something in people's minds where they're like, this should work in theory. And we've slowly seen production systems be built by IBM, by Microsoft, by Google with Willow, Microsoft, of course, with Majorana, with D-Wave, although some people say it's not really a quantum computer, blah, blah, blah. But there's a bunch of companies working on this.
Yeah.
And they're all, what are they doing? They're all pushing. And what are they trying to push? They're trying to push the kind of following things. They're trying to build bigger quantum computers. When I say bigger, I mean with a larger number of bits or qubits, as they call them, because you need lots of qubits to do useful work. Okay, to run these two algorithms, the factor of the numbers, to do the search, you got to have loads and loads of qubits. Otherwise, it's not very effective. Number two, if you have loads of qubits and you ask the computer to do something, you need it to stay in the quantum entangled state or quantum superposition state for a long time so that it has the time to do the computation. And so over time, these quantum computers they're staying in this state of superposition longer and longer. So I like to think of it like this. Quantum computers started as an idea. They're getting more and more teeth. At the moment, they're like, little tiger, baby tigers that are like, have little pointy teeth. They can hurt you, but they're not going to break crypto. But if they keep going in the direction that they're going, and we keep going at the pace that we're going, within the next 5 years or so, we're going to see a quantum computer with teeth big enough to take a bite out of your blockchain's ass. Okay, and so how do we make blockchain secure against these things? We can't ask the scientists and the researchers to stop doing work and to stop advancing computer science. That's not going to work. So we have to, on our side, as people building production systems, and by the way, outside of blockchain, this doesn't matter whether it's a banking application, whether it's encryption on a database for your customer data, or whether it's a blockchain like Bitcoin or Algorand. All cryptography that's used, all public key cryptography that's currently used, will likely have to be upgraded. And so that means replacing elliptic curves in RSA with post-quantum schemes. Now, post-quantum schemes don't use elliptic curves or don't use the factorization of large semi-primes as a security trapdoor. They use things like finding a path through an n-dimensional lattice or multivariate calculations or the strength of code-based schemes or hash-based schemes or super singular isogenies. There's all these different mathematical techniques on how to do crypto in a way that quantum computers can't attack, or can attack but can't break. And so we're taking this seriously. Some blockchains are saying, we'll never have to worry about this. But we're taking it seriously. The US government is taking it seriously. NIST, one of their agencies, has spent a shit ton of time standardizing what they believe to be safe cryptography in the context of quantum computers. And so Algorand has already applied post-quantum cryptography to its blockchain. And so largely, again, so zooming out of Algorand and talking about blockchains more generally, because I think it's important to talk about it in a more general sense. When you're making your blockchain post-quantum secure, high level, you need to do three things. You need to secure the history of the chain. So all the stuff that was done with the old cryptography up to this point. You need to secure the consensus mechanism, because typically, not always, but typically the consensus mechanisms for proof-of-stake blockchains use cryptography that's vulnerable to quantum attack. And you need to finally secure the accounts on the blockchain. So that's quite literally the public-private keys that are secure, that are holding your funds. Now, Algorand has taken the first step. It has secured the history of the chain. And it's done that by applying a post-quantum signature using this algorithm called Falcon, which stands for I probably shouldn't have said stands for, because now I've got to say it. It's like fast Fourier lattice-based signatures over n-true or something like that. But what it is a digital signature scheme that uses if you've seen the movie Interstellar, n-dimensional lattice-based objects to basically build a digital signature that will shield the entire history of the chain, all of the transactions that are already there. And if any of them are modified, we'll be able to tell, because the digital signature on all of those historical transactions will not be valid. So we know that the history of the chain which is now continuously signed every 12 minutes or so, is now impervious to quantum attack with our current understanding of the security of Falcon, which is one of the most prominent post-quantum digital signature schemes. But we still have work to do. We still need to look at building a post-quantum VRF for the consensus mechanism, so a post-quantum verifiable random function, and we still need to look at how we can move to a place where our accounts use post-quantum signatures to spend funds, to interact with contracts, etc. Because right now, both Algorand's consensus and Algorand's accounts, like nearly all blockchains, use elliptic curves for their security. So a lot done, but a lot more to do. And what I would say is that the most important thing we've learned is, what is the lift to bring post-quantum primitives to a production-grade decentralized system that is currently running and servicing people? And it's hard. And so there's a lot of learnings internally in terms of the engineering and the delivery teams on how to get this stuff out the door and how to do it in a robust way. And so, I think that will stand to us as we kind of move towards securing the accounts and then to securing consensus against quantum computers. And so I would advise any CTOs or any technical strategists or leaders for major blockchains to start looking at this now. Even if you're not going to do the production engineering immediately, you got to understand what the landscape looks like, and you got to understand what the lift looks like. Because if you find that you haven't got the right people on staff, and you're you read a headline that says Majorana now breaks RSA 2048, you're in fucking trouble.
Yeah, definitely something you don't want to leave until the last minute. So I think it's great that you guys are looking at this now and taking the steps necessary. And obviously that keeps you guys busy. There's a lot going on there, and the peer-to-peer gossip network and everything else that you guys are working on. What's next? Or what would you say, what's the big thing you're most excited for in 2025?
Yeah, it's good. So we're about to release, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, but
go ahead, do it. Alpha, give it to us.
So we have a new version of AlgoKit that's going to come out very soon, and it's going to bring TypeScript support. So we have basically the Algorand Foundation have been working on this. We've been engineering it with our partners. And so right now people write apps for Algorand in Python. And very soon you'll be able to write apps for Algorand in TypeScript, which is the two most popular languages, I think, globally at the moment. So it used to be that you had to learn this yucky language called Teal. Not that there's anything technically wrong with it, but it's just not fun. And so we can't expect some 15-year-old in Korea to learn Teal to play with Algorand. We need to give them Python or TypeScript, right? We need to make it easy. And similarly, by the way, if you're an enterprise-grade company and you're thinking of adding blockchain, like you're the European Central Bank are not going to hire people to learn Teal. They have Python developers, they have TypeScript developers. I know because I work there. And so we wanted to make it super easy in order for people to use this thing. And so we're going to be rolling out TypeScript, I think this month, in fact. But I don't want to steal the fanfare. There's going to be a whole branding exercise around this. There's going to be a big promotion around it, and it's very exciting. But we're developing this in open source, so people can see it. It's not like it's a super secret. It's not closed source. It's right there on GitHub right now. So anyone who looked for it would find it. So hopefully I'm not spilling the beans too soon.
Awesome. Yeah, no, obviously that opens it up to so many more developers for sure to have another language like that.
And DB, more important maybe is enterprise companies, they care about go-to-market costs, they care about maintenance costs, they care about implementation lift. And so you got to make it cheap, fast, and easy for them to deliver. Otherwise, they're going to go somewhere else. And so that's what we're focused on. Of course, by the way, we're not stopping there. The protocol needs to evolve, right? We need to stay as competitive as possible with our competitors. So, people want to see scale. They want to see speed. And we're already functionally very fast, 10,000 TPS, blah, 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 blah. But we need to stay, in lockstep with the leaders of the industry. We want to be a leader of this industry in terms of the things that we're doing. And so the protocol needs to evolve. We're going to be looking at post-quantum security. We're going to be looking at privacy because we think that that's very important. And so, yeah, lots of cool stuff happening.
Yeah, so many other questions and areas I want to dive into. I know we're running out of time here. So on this point here, though, with the AI, I mean, we couldn't really touch on that too much, but do you see with the languages, I see a lot of talk about the languages almost not mattering in the near future because of where AI is and how it's becoming so powerful with coding.
Yeah, so it's kind of the idea that you can say, type a message to an AI and say, build me a contract for X to do X, and it will go, and you just
In
copy
any
paste it.
language, yeah. Or
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe. I use those tools too. I use LLMs. I run them locally on my computer. I use Quen 2.5, 32 billion coder. I use a Distill of one. I use Llama 3. I mean, they're powerful. I also have a subscription with GPT with OpenAI. I've got a Grok subscription. So I use these tools too. But I don't know if it's a good idea to go to a place where you just type English or whatever language and you just copy paste code. And I'm not talking about the fact that, like, right now they make mistakes and they're imperfect and maybe they're 90% perfect or 92% perfect, and sometimes they get 100% the first time. I know they do, and I know they're pretty good, and I understand if it doesn't work the first time, you can kind of say, here's the error message, that didn't work, can you fix it? And usually it'll go, oh, I'm sorry, I fucked up this line, and here's a new one. But I don't think it's good, zooming out, thinking now more philosophically about this whole thing, to deploy business logic that you don't understand. And I don't think it will ever be in the interest of a customer if you're buying a product from a company and the people who are working in that company don't understand how their product works. I don't think that that's ever going to be a good thing. Now, maybe that's where things will go, and maybe I will be using products and that are developed by people who don't understand how it works fundamentally, and just express business intent or express some kind of English description of what they want. But I think major production systems, mission critical systems, your air traffic control systems, your life support systems, your systems that are running critical infrastructure like the tube or the subway or other things like that, you need people who know what a pointer is. You need people who understand what the stack is. You need people who understand what the heap is, or what an array is. And if you get to the point where, at the extreme tail of this, where your engineers have no idea, or your vibe coders, I think they're called vibe coders, I think that's what it's called. But if they have absolutely no idea how the product works under the hood, I think you're going to be in a world of pain. And that is not a place that I'm leading our engineering teams.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And we're still so early in that space too. We'll have to watch and see how it develops and where it goes from here.
For sure. Like, it's a very powerful technology and it's extremely helpful. And I write faster code with it, but I'm careful when I write code to make sure that I understand the intent of what it's doing, line by line, because it's just too dangerous not to. And for engineers out there, I would say, don't lose your edge. Stay good, because you're going to lose your edge if you rely on these tools too much. It's like eating fast food. It's like fast food. Nice sometimes. Yes, it's good. Yes, if you get home late and you just want something done, it's easy to order fast food, but don't eat it all the time.
Yep. So many other ways I could take this into, but this has been a great chat. Definitely enjoy chatting with you and going over all this stuff. So really appreciate your time today, John. Can't wait to do this again with you.
Same, DB. Thank you so much for having me. And I love speaking to your audience. It's a totally different audience to my usual podcasts, which are, a lot of them are very algo focused. So it's great to get the message out to a wider audience. And I love chatting with you too. So happy anytime to give you an update on what's going on. Let's sync again in the next couple of months.